This is going to be a walkthrough of the self-service features and settings management system. So I'm going to dive right in here. I'm going to cover in this video what it is. I'm going to talk about key outcomes and why we set this features and settings management system up. I'm going to go through an overview and concepts of features and settings, what they are, and then who sees them, and then give you a quick walkthrough on a demo site to show you where everything's at and kind of explain more details of how it works. So the first one is, what is it? And basically what we've done is we've set up a standard interface. You're looking at the view of it that's application level features and settings that applies to the whole CIMcloud application. But we did it so workers can, when they log in to the worker portal, they can simplify the managing and overriding of features. So they can basically determine what features that are within the scope that you purchased in CIMcloud that you turn on and off. So what do you use and not use? And then some of those features have associated kind of core configuration settings, and it allows you to set those core configuration settings yourself. Prior to 2020 R2, a lot of these settings were buried in a way that our pro services group had to access the deeper level configuration settings. And through these interfaces, we have exposed them so customers through the worker portal can self-service on the setup and configuration of these themselves. So as I said, kind of the reason why, one is to give self-service access to these features and settings. And we built it on the same platform that we've always been running for user profiling and the handling these settings. We just made a simpler user interface and handle all the tricky stuff below the hood to make it work. It also allows, by leveraging our user profiling framework, it allows the features to be turned on and off per user. So that's what tailored towards specific users. So whether they're workers or customers, you can effectively apply the settings, turning them on or off, and the associated configuration or the features, sorry, you can turn them on and off, and the associated configuration settings that go with those features. And I'll give you an example. You can apply them to down to specific users, workers using groups, or you can do them globally to a whole bunch of customers or a whole bunch of workers, which are what the users are. And we've basically simplified the interface. And as I mentioned, all of the underplumbing that's been along and established and tried and true in the system has been leveraged for this. So we built on top of those building blocks. So if you are familiar with the terms like data sets or option overrides, those are the things below the hood that are making these work. If you're not familiar with those, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know. The other thing, prior to this, user profiling was always through an allow configuration. So you got the total footprint of what was allowed. We've also added deny capabilities here, so you can override and allow on a more specific level to a user. You can deny them a feature or override the settings. So this is just going through a few concepts here and some terminology. Modules, basically this is the software that's included in the platform, and the base platform is always included. That's included for all CIMcloud customers. And then we have a series of optional add-on bundles, we call them, which are optional purchases you can make. And these are set up by CIMcloud when you make your purchase, or if you upgrade and add-on bundles. We just set them up or configure them. There may be some ERP related sync pieces that go with that as well that we address, but we set those up so when the platform's delivered those modules, it knows what modules you have. And then features, basically each module is a collection of one or more features. The base platform, for example, has hundreds and hundreds of features in it that are included with the base, and then add-on modules typically have a series of features that are with it. Within the features might include some visible functionality. So that's just things you can see, either your customers can see or workers can see on the screen. They could be turned on or off. And it also might include moving parts that are turned on and off when you enable the features. So things like system emails that run behind the scenes, or ERP sync configurations that move data back and forth between the ERP system and that particular feature. An example might be inventory. If you buy the inventory bundle, we are syncing inventory levels by warehouse from your ERP system out to the CIMcloud platform. So that's data's there, and there's also visible stuff you can see, like maybe an inventory watch if it's out of stock to sign up for an inventory watch. And then the settings are basically just configuration settings. So I'll give you an example. This is a simple one in our advanced B2B portal bundle, which is an add-on bundle. One of the features we have allows you to apply a minimum product total in the shopping cart before the customer can check out. So it basically, if they don't hit the minimum product total, then it won't let them check out, and it tells them they need to hit the minimum product total. So the feature is just an on-off setting for the minimum cart total that you can see. And when you turn it on, it exposes a configuration setting, which is what is the dollar amount of that total. In this case, it's set to $100 in the screenshot. So that's an example of the feature is the min product total, and the setting is that $100 dollar amount, which can be changed to whatever you want. Now, the cool thing about this with the way we apply these is you could have the default be that you apply a minimum total, and then for specific customers, you could not enforce a minimum total, or go the other way, where by default, it doesn't enforce a minimum total, but maybe on specific retail customer sites, you enforce a total, but on other sites like your B2B portal, you don't. Or you have different groups of customers. Say you have B2C customers that are paying higher pricing. You could create a group for them and not enforce the total. But for B2B customers that pay lower pricing, you enforce this minimum total, just as an example. So basically, the concepts that I got into on who sees them is just a notable is some of the settings, the features and settings are application wide. Most of them aren't, but some of them are. So you either turn them on or off, and it applies to the whole CIMcloud application. So they're not overridable. And that goes into the core functionality of the application. Most can be set and overridden on the various levels that I'm going to discuss here. And basically what you're seeing here is a simple diagram of what I'll just call containers that we use to apply the features and settings to users. So users really simply are customers. Those are your customers that are going to log in and self-service through a customer site like a B2B portal or a retail-facing store or catalog. And then workers are typically your employees. They log into the worker portal. So basically, the terminologies that I'm introducing in these squares, I'm about to show you in the actual application where these are at. So application settings, this is basically turning features on and off, and there's some extra controls in there I'll get into in a second on these settings, but this is setting defaults for the whole application, that if you don't override anywhere else, then these rules are going to apply. And then this is basically on the customer side, how things are applied to individual customers. And basically, if you don't use a priority position here, this is the ranking that it uses. So the more it uses the law of specificity, so the closer it is to the user, the more overriding it is. So the application settings, the foundation, and then on customer sites, every B2B portal or customer-facing retail site is a customer site in the system that you have a bunch of configuration options you can use. And part of what you can do is turn on and off features and override the application defaults there. And then we have groups, and groups can be applied in two different ways. One is to accounts. That is typically in your ERP what you call a customer, but that's the company that you would sell to. And then you can also apply groups to individual contacts. Those are specific logins or people. And then on the worker side, we have a workspace settings. That's basically, there's a bunch of features or things you can turn on and off for workers. And in the workspace settings, you can set the overall defaults there. Most of the settings are not in application and workspace settings. They're in one or the other that you'll see, but the application settings do flow through to the workers. And then you've got workspace specific settings. And then you have groups for workers also. That's basically a way to set up preferences and apply them to one or more worker logins or people. So I'll do a quick walkthrough now and just show you these different areas that I showed you in the boxes here. Starting with, I'm basically in the application settings. So these first areas, I'm in the settings workspace over here. And then if you go to system-wide settings, I'm looking at the application settings menu. And you'll see here in the features, you can drill in and see features grouped by kind of functionality area where they're at. So I happen to be in the adding to cart functionality area. And you can see here, this is organized by the base platform. and then optional add-on bundles that I have. And we happen to have features within the adding to cart arena in base and the advanced B2B portal. So you can see my min cart total here. And basically the way this works is when I turn it on, it will expose if there's any configuration settings beyond just turning the feature on and off, it will show this. This switch here only shows up on application settings, which is for the entire application. And this basically lets me choose whether or not on different levels this can actually be overridden. So if I wanted to force everyone to have a min cart total of $100 and didn't want it to be overridden on a site level, a customer site level, or an individual customer level through a group, I could set this to no, and this would prevent this feature from being overridden. It would be forced to inherit from here. So that's basically the concept here of the features. If I go in now I'm in customer sites, which is under customer site settings. I hit customer sites. By default, you'll have one site, the B2B portal. If you happen to buy add-on bundles for retail catalog, you'll have a second site in here, this retail catalog or store. But when I go into the individual site, if I hit edit here, there's a bunch of configuration settings that go here. So there's some general stuff here, and then I can get into design settings here. I won't go into all the details here. The features are in this area right here that has the same organization as the application level features. But I can come in here and go in. If I go to adding to cart, for example, I can come in here and the default mode when I'm on these additional layers or layers that stack on top of the application settings is I can either allow, which is explicitly enforcing it to say, yes, apply the minimum product total. And if I do that, you'll see it'll expose the dollar amount that I can then also set. I can deny it, which means that if it's enforced on a layer that's lower priority than this, that's less priority or less important, then this will win over that, and it will not apply the minimum product total. And then inherit, which is the default mode, just means don't set it on this level, let it flow through from the level before this, which in this case is the application settings that I just showed you. So that's the concept of allow or deny. So I'm on a specific site. So this means that if a customer came to this specific retail site, then they would, in this case, if I hit allow, I could force them to get $150 minimum total by setting this. And this would mean every user on this site, unless they have a customer group, which I'll talk about in a second, every user on this site is now going to get, no matter what the application says, it's going to get forced to $150 minimum cart total because that feature's on, forced to be on and at the $150 minimum. Okay, and then on the customer, if you get down to the individual customer level, which we call accounts in our system, those are the companies, in the CRM workspace, there is a customer groups link that's under customers. And when you go to the customer groups, it'll show you a list of groups. You can add and modify groups, and you can see a button here for that. I have clicked on the specific group B2B customer, and I'm looking at that group. So now I can do the same thing. I can see the adding to cart, and I can go in now, and let's say I wanted to deny it. I could force this to deny. So if this customer happened to log into the site that had the $150 total minimum, with deny, they will not actually get the minimum cart total applied. So they won't have a minimum cart total in this logic because I've overridden it. Or I could force it to allow and then reset that total back to $75. So anyone that's B2B will have a $75 total in this case, where the general site would be $150 if they logged in on that customer site. So you can skip the customer site level and just have application defaults and then go into the individual groups. One notable here is when you go into members, this is basically showing you when on each group you have a set of settings that all the people, this container is packaging together. And then when it applies it to the members. And the members are either accounts, so these are companies, which are typically your ERP customers, or contacts. And to apply it to those, you just basically select the appropriate ones. So in this case, let me move that back. ABS and Alexander Specialties, those accounts, all the logins on those accounts would get the settings in this group. And Chris Bradley, that individual user, regardless of what account he's on, he will get it when he logs in. He will get the settings that we just set. If you go over to the worker side, so I'm going to come back here real quick. I just went through application settings, I went through customer sites, and then I went through customer groups and showed them how they can be applied to accounts and contacts. I'm now going to go over to Workspace Settings and Worker Groups just to show you that. So coming back in here, the Workspace Settings, I'm back in the Settings workspace here. And under System-Wide Settings, if you click on Workspace Settings, you'll see this. And you'll see the only things, the sub-navigation under Features is Workers. And this is basically a limited set of stuff that you can turn on or off. This kind of serves as the base level. So these are not also in the application settings. They're only in the workspace settings, which is why you see this allow default status override at this level here. So this is things like showing whole workspaces, like the content product or this settings workspace that we're in, and then other options here that you can turn on or off. And you can see this is grouped by the different modules that you have purchased, also the base package and then the other associated modules. So this works the same way. And then worker groups, these are down under workers. Also in the settings workspace, you'll see worker groups. When you click on that, you'll see the listing of workers. I kind of verbally talked through that when we were talking through customer groups. They have a similar interface on customer groups. But then I just pick the individual worker group that I want to manage. Say it's customer service reps. And when I hit edit on that, I'll see the general name and description of it. And then if I go into features, I can see what features this group is going to get. And this is the same concept that we were talking about with allow, deny, or inherit. The default on all these is going to be inherit. But if I explicitly want to allow something, it will force it to always allow that for any workers that have this group. So the key there is you want to keep the inheritance at a maximum. So you're only doing a trick is typically as you get into more specific customer groups or settings or worker groups or settings, only allow or deny the very specific things that are needed for that group and inherit the rest is a pretty decent a best practice to go. It's not required. You can explicitly allow or deny anything you want as you go through it, and then you obviously save it. The members here are the same things we just showed you before. This is showing you what workers these are applied to. One notable is if you go into an individual worker and edit them, you'll see the other side of these boxes there where you'll see the different customer groups and which one that worker has, because they can have more than one. Same thing when you go into customer contacts in the CRM workspace. If you edit a contact, you can then see which customer groups that contact or that account belong to when you go into accounts or contacts. So hopefully that helps. We just went through the worker workspace settings and worker groups and showed you how that fits into the stack. And that concludes our presentation here on the self-service features and settings management system.